for making me whole. Thank you, Lord, for giving to me thy great salvation, so rich and free.
And as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside. And on the way he said to them, "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and scribes. They'll condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. And he'll be raised on the third day." Good Thursday morning. The thing I noticed as I read these verses is that this was a private conversation. Today, the public preaching of the cross is an essential part of the gospel. But at this moment, it was a private matter between Jesus and his disciples. It was important that the disciples be with Jesus for this journey. He still had much to teach them, to prepare them for what was to come. The heart of Jesus' words, of course, is his own suffering. Jesus would be betrayed. He'd be condemned to death. Israel's rejection of the Messiah would be made abundantly clear. Keep in mind that Israel was never known for their faithfulness to God. From the moment they left Egypt, they were complaining about Moses and accusing God of abandoning them. But here's the thing. The Old Testament sacrifices were a foreshadowing of what Jesus would do. How would his death for sinners be accomplished? Who would put him to death as God had ordained if everyone loved and believed him? Israel's very unfaithfulness was a key component to the salvation that Jesus brought us. Jesus was mocked and flogged, as if being crucified was not a brutal enough way to die. Criminals were often savagely beaten before their death on the cross. Mockery began following the flogging, while the victim awaited the preparation of the crosspiece that they would be nailed to. Jesus would be crucified. Crucifixion is not only a brutal death, it's also very public and humiliating. I mentioned last Sunday that our word excruciating is the Latin for tormented on a cross. No wonder the preaching of Christ crucified was a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. But on the third day, Jesus would be raised. It's important to remember that Jesus almost never spoke of his death without speaking of his resurrection. He didn't simply come to die for sinners. He also came to live for them. Sin and death would be given every opportunity to destroy Jesus, but they could not hold him. For the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross, despised the very idea that it was shameful. He gloried in his cross. At the Last Supper, he told the disciples, "This is my body. This is my blood, which is for you." That was the cross for Jesus, the greatest act of love of all time. So he despised the shame of the cross, and when he rose from the dead, he rose with the wounds on his hands and feet intact. He said to all his disciples, "See my hands, see my feet, touch me." Never forget, the Son of Man died for the sins of humanity. His death was a perfect sacrifice. He did it to save people, and he saves them perfectly and completely. He saved you and me.